MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sheryl McCumsey, founder of Pesticide Free Alberta. Welcome back to the show, Sheryl.
Hello.
Sheryl, a number of concerns about pesticides popping up. First of all, in Edmonton, you filed some concerns about a particular pesticide that is banned elsewhere in Canada but used in Alberta. What's the pesticide and what was your concern?
Well, the name of the pesticide is chlorpyrifos, and it is banned in Quebec now, recently actually, and in Europe, and but pretty much everywhere else, farmers are still using some of it, and in the U.S., the Environmental Protection Agency has been ordered by a federal judge to ban it because it is so harmful. But Edmonton is not the only municipality to use it for mosquito control in Canada and perhaps North America, from documentation that we have from Health Canada and the U.S., but also they've abused it. And they've abused it in that label instructions for a pesticide clearly articulate how a pesticide is to be used. And in this case, this pesticide, with the known harm that's occurred, causing birth defects and brain damage and so on, is not to be applied in or around parks, school grounds, playing fields, etc., because of the potential for exposure. Now, Edmonton has not only applied this in a park repeatedly, and we know this because we applied to see the spray sheets that state the wind speed, the chemical used, where it's sprayed, gives locations that's on a 1 mile grid, and this 1 mile grid puts this pesticide use smack in the middle of a large park in Edmonton. So we know the city sprayed it in a park repeatedly. And over the last 2 years, we've had 5 meetings with Alberta Environment in which we have expressed this concern. We have proof of this, that this pesticide was abused, and still we have had no response around this concern, no investigation. I FOIP'd the government to ask about my own complaint that I made, and the response for the investigation was that they closed the file. These are the words, close the file as the city notifies the public with ads in the newspapers. Well, yes, they're required to notify the public that they're spraying pesticides, but saying that you're spraying a pesticide and abusing a pesticide are two different issues that have not been investigated. And we saw that there were 6 other complaints from different people that we don't know about even, about the city's spraying of their mosquito control program. And then there's serious sounding concerns, like people worried that they've lost their horses or that they see birds and bees lying around on the ground dead after these helicopters came over and sprayed. So it's remarkable. And then after getting the auditor to do an investigation, the mayor had been announcing to the public that the city was no longer spraying this chemical because there were 2 products, and the city stopped using one and started using another that had exactly the same chemical in it. And then when the auditor did a report, the mayor had to recount and said, well, that he was under the impression that the city wasn't spraying it anymore, and that there was a notice that went out to councillors saying they weren't spraying this chemical, but kind of failed to mention that they were just spraying another product. Kind of like saying, I don't take Tylenol anymore, but you're taking Excedrin, which is exactly the same thing. So that's been going on for years, and we wonder what people are supposed to do when they have known concerns about abuses of pesticides, when they go to such lengths to make a report and nothing is done. So that's a real story. We went to Alberta Environment repeatedly and got a letter back saying that there was basically no contravention and that they did all investigations on this, but the FOIP says something else. So we wonder why we can't get this addressed. And so just yesterday we were in the Alberta Ledge and we made an announcement with the Liberal Party aided in making that announcement that we would like to see an investigation on how things are done because we have concerns that things that are supposed to be happening are not happening. And we see this happening across Canada. I'm in contact with people across Canada who tell very disturbing stories. One recently where I heard farmers, children had been sprayed and the kids are having seizures. And in talking to a doctor, I'm told that that can definitely be a result of an exposure to a pesticide this way. So what can Canadians expect from their government if they cannot have abuses addressed that are illustrated to be dealt with our regulations that we currently have today?
Is the job up to the public then to paper their politicians with emails, maybe even real letters, which may or may not get through nowadays, to let them know that you're concerned, because often politicians will respond, but right now if there isn't a public outcry, they don't bother?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the public is well informed on this and not informed about the magnitude of it. I mean, for example, right now several groups are saying that the registration of glyphosate should be under scrutiny because the science used that was presented to Health Canada to register this product looks to be flawed, as according to lawsuits that exposed contradictions in how this is possibly linked to cancer, for example. And so people don't, first of all, even understand how serious it is that the system that we think we have isn't really working. And then when they see a problem, it's not really clear to them where they go to even file a report. We have someone in our group who spent literally 2 days trying to file a complaint and then never heard back. So people give up. And then writing letters is not going to be enough. They can be easily ignored. I mean, I see hundreds of complaints, and that's probably the tip of the iceberg. I have hundreds of complaints, and I wish I could show them to everybody and so they could see the seriousness of these complaints that actually get filed, but it doesn't even look like they're investigated. So just writing a letter is not going to be enough. People actually have to ask to see and have meetings with their MLAs and express their concerns. And this needs to be widely reported, because when you look at the studies that show health concerns with pesticides and you look at the numbers of diseases increasing in Canada, double-digit numbers in a 10-year time frame that are really very concerning. So we need to do more than write letters. We need to make a lot of noise. We need to share this information with each other in the form of the actual evidence and science that illustrates that what we're being told and what is the truth is not really exactly the same thing.
We'll have more with Sheryl McCumsey right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Vatic Ventures Corp. is a potash exploration company focused on the Korat Basin in Thailand, the world's largest undeveloped potash resource. Vatic's management has extensive potash exploration and development experience in Thailand. Vatic will have marketing advantage compared to Western producers. Drill program commences this spring. Vatic trades on the TSX Venture, symbol VCV, and on Frankfurt, symbol V8V2. Visit our website, vaticventures.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sheryl McCumsey. Sheryl, if the Alberta government isn't doing due diligence to keep poisons out of the lungs and digestive systems and brains of its citizens, is Health Canada doing its job in making sure that we're not being exposed to dangerous chemicals?
I would say I have no faith in them anymore. I wrote a letter to the PMRA in regards to the abuse of this pesticide. In a meeting with the compliance officer from their department, I was asked if the park was actually a park. That was the question. I just couldn't believe it. I eventually wrote the Attorney General of Canada because in New York State Attorney General, they had sued Dow Chemical successfully for saying this pesticide is safe and for withholding hundreds of pesticide reports. They were fined $749,000 by New York State Attorney General. So I thought I'm going to write the Attorney General of Canada because I couldn't get a straightforward answer from Health Canada about anything, really. I would get this long, drawn-out response that didn't ever ask my questions. So I wrote the Attorney General of Canada. And then I got an answer back saying that Edmonton is really not allowed to spray this in parks. Meanwhile, we get emails sort of saying kind of like maybe they have permission to spray it in some parks some of the time in some circumstances from employees. I'm like really confused about this. Why we have this contradiction happening between people here in Alberta and what we're hearing after the Attorney General of Canada actually forwarded my letter to the Executive Director of the PMRA. So I really have no faith in this regulatory body for addressing abuses, for sure. I don't have much faith in how they assess pesticides because they're not really assessing products. They're just assessing the active ingredient. And so if we're going to talk about science, where is the science on the actual product we're exposed to? It's not even there. There was a letter that I used to illustrate how they have contradicted themselves. For example, there's a group that is concerned about how we're using sodium cyanide and strychnine to cull wolves in Alberta. It's pretty horrible way to kill a wolf. The letter says in it that this is not harmful to wildlife. Well, it's used to kill wolves, but it's not harmful to wildlife. How do you put those two things in one letter without contradicting yourself? I mean, that's clear. But for a lot of concerns that people might have that they might write Health Canada, you get answers back that I know things that they haven't done because I've looked or I know scientists who have looked. It's failing Canadians. And if you look around the world, you'll see other countries are advancing and making restrictions, and that's what Quebec is actually doing. And I've even seen people writing about how they recognize this. They recognize this lack. And so Quebec has, removed atrazine, chlorpyrifos, and they're they're trying to help their farmers. They're not just pulling things off the shelf, basically. They're trying to help farmers to find ways to grow crops using fewer pesticides. So there's less going into the environment, there's less going into the food system, etc. How come the rest of Canada isn't doing that?
Well, one thing too, if Canadian farmers are going to have to compete with American farmers under the new North American Trade Agreement, wouldn't one of the natural advantages Canadians could have is we use either no chemicals or fewer chemicals to produce our plants and animals than Americans do?
Well, I'll tell you, that's what the world wants. When you look at what people want, this is what they want. If you are really good at marketing, if you pay attention, you can't just market and peddle something people don't want. You have to understand what people really want. This is what people want. And it's what some countries are demanding now because they've come to this realization. This is really a global issue, a national issue, a local issue. And farmers are really paying more and more money for products that kind of are almost like like a chemical addiction, because you use glyphosate, it stops working because you get weed resistance, and then now you got to use combinations of glyphosate and dicamba or 2,4-D, which is even worse. And who's going to want to eat that? The thing is we're always focused on trading. We really need to consider growing our own food a whole lot more. If you're growing local food for your local community, do you have to worry about the market anymore? If you have a market that's there and you can depend on? The thing to think about with this too is California has just had a horrific fire. Horrific. And a lot of us here in Alberta anyways, and BC, I don't really know exactly what your market is for imports and exports, but we're importing an awful lot of our food now, and in Alberta we do get a lot of food from California. Well, I've been warning people, hey, something can happen and the food truck's not going to show up. Why are we not, as local citizens, making more connections with our farmers and supporting them directly with our desire to have cleaner food and to support them to transition away from a chemical-intensive system that is harmful to them as well? This is the thing our government is not doing. This is something that people need to start considering doing it for themselves.
We'll have more with Sheryl McCumsey right after the break.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sheryl McCumsey. Sheryl, in BC, the forestry companies, after they clear-cut a forest, like to lay down Roundup to help protect their monoculture, so they believe they'll get a faster return with the one species they want to harvest. Is this really working out to be a good strategy, using glyphosate?
I think there's quite a bit of evidence to say the opposite, and I would like to see the evidence that say that if we're looking at harvesting that tree the very next year, maybe so. But when you're growing a tree, it's not going to grow in 1 year. So we have to think a little long term about how we're going to grow that tree. If we're just looking at our forests as plantations for harvesting wood and paper, etc., even then, this is very myopic and short term, because the pesticides that we use for wiping out all this other vegetation is also used for desiccating crops, drying them out, like drying the crops so that we can harvest them. What do we think it's going to do with all the vegetation in that forest? It's going to create, a person can look at the science that also illustrates that this is not a good idea, that diversity in a forest is better and healthier for growing anything. But when you look at what this herbicide is actually used for, it's just common sense to understand that if we're going to use it to dry out a crop, it's going to dry out everything in that forest, creates tinder, which is terrific for fires. Certainly climate change is a concern, and certainly all these other things are concerns. But if you create tinder for a fire, you're just going to enhance that fire to either burn longer or hotter or farther than it would normally if there was leafed out aspen that will halt or stall a fire in its tracks. So herbicide spraying, who is it working for? It's not really working for hunters who want to harvest deer or moose in the forest, because there's nothing for those animals to eat. There's nothing for them to subsist on. If you are concerned about insects attacking your trees, for example, if you have no birds in those forests, there is not going to be anything to eat those insects. So you create another problem in that you could have an infestation of an insect because you have nothing that's going to prey on those insects that feed on those trees. Because most of those birds are going to nest in trees like aspen. So when you look at all of the consequences of these things, including things like if there's no vegetation there and you have a really heavy rain, what are you going to have? You're going to have soil erosion. It isn't rocket science to even understand these things on a basic level, but we make it complicated. And when you look at all of the issues, who is it paying? It's paying the agrochemical companies. It's not paying anyone else anything. It's paying the agrochemical companies. And we have to decide whether we're going to start questioning these things. Like sometimes taxpayers are actually, I know in some provinces the taxpayers are actually paying for this to happen. And then who's paying to stop these fires from burning when they happen? So it is a part of all of our responsibility to question and shine the light on policies and how we determine to do these things because they impact everyone. If you're living in the path of that fire and your home is gone, how would you feel knowing that these things are being done that negatively impact you personally and where you're living? And the fires that we had in BC last summer were quite bad. The smoke was bad. That was affecting everybody's health in a negative way. So if we can be doing things that are better practices, we should be doing them.
And the thing is, the solutions are literally right under our noses.
Yes, often they are. And it's very hard, it seems, for people like I know the man who's trying to, who's running the Stop the Spray program in Prince George. He's a smart man, and he's got a lot of good people with him. BC should be listening to him. I mean, and the people of BC should be thinking about why he's doing this, why he's spending his own personal time doing this. These are people who actually really, really care and are doing this for the betterment of their own community. We should be listening to them. We shouldn't be shutting the doors on them. The other people who are lobbying for something else, they're lobbying for their own profit. Why is it we value someone who's making a profit and making money on selling something over someone who's gathered the evidence and the science and all of the things and all the concerns that we should be looking for? It's going to impact everyone down the road, whether you're right in that community or not, because all of these things cost taxpayers money to address.
Sheryl, where can people get more information about Pesticide-Free Alberta?
Well, as I've said many times before, we've been very busy, and the best place to go is to our Facebook pages. In BC, I would check out Stop the Spray BC. That's not my page, but it's got a lot of good information about the forestry issues that I've been discussing. Or go to Pesticide Free Edmonton or Pesticide Free Alberta on Facebook. We will eventually have a website that will be addressing issues for Canadians, and we'll be working with people across Canada who have these concerns.
Sheryl, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Sheryl McCumsey, founder of Pesticide Free Alberta. Her website, pesticidefreealberta.org. If you have any questions for Sheryl or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.